Welcome, everybody, to episode 7. I'm going to make sure I get that right. That was When It Was Wrong by California Honey Drop. Yeah, so we're gonna get going here. As always, follow us on Instagram at politics.ontherocks. Share, repost, shout us out. I mean, that means the world to us when you guys, promote the page. That's obviously what we're trying to do. We're trying to reach more people, and we can't do that if, you guys don't share us and we don't, get out to more people. If you guys have recommendations for what you want to see us drink, what you want to hear us talk about, what you want to see us smoke as far as cigars go, or crack, whatever, we're pretty open. Just shoot us a message on Instagram, and we'll jump in. Our first topic, our only topic is just because it's going to be really expansive in regards to prison systems, I guess, as a whole in this country. And I think this is going to be a good episode. We're going to get pretty deep into some things, so it should be fun. As always, I'm your host, Nick. To my right, we have Cameron, or not Cameron, Chris is to my right.
Hello.
What's up? And across from me, I think he's sleeping. You sleeping?
All good.
There's Boogie, and of course, Cameron, as always.
Hey! All right, special guest for tonight's is St. Augustine Distillery Florida Straight Bourbon Whiskey. So, fun fact about this whiskey is I actually have been to this distillery, and it's actually a cool spot. So, if you're ever in St. Augustine, definitely check this spot out. Got a cool little restaurant up top. Got actually pretty good food.
Nice.
They got a cool little tour. Yeah, definitely a cool spot.
Can't beat that, man. Good, local Florida.
Yeah.
Florida grown.
Yeah, we like that.
Florida made stuff.
We like
I'm
Florida
excited
bourbon.
about this one.
Crack this boy open.
Yeah,
then.
let's do a first sip. You having trouble? That bottle's whooping your ass, son.
I was trying to get that ASMR into it.
I don't think we have the audio set up for that.
All right.
I'm just going to go ahead and apologize in advance. We got Hurricane Elsa off our shore, so it's pretty shitty tonight. It's actually really nice, but, it's rainy, and we're not in a studio, so just deal with it.
Well, it's funny, like Florida, we say it's nice when it's, like, not hot as crap.
Yeah.
Well, like, it's nice, but it's raining.
As long as I'm not sweating, it's nice.
Yeah,
And it's only
a good evening.
50% humidity instead of 90.
Yeah.
So we're like, it's nice.
Hey, you know what? It's not the heat, it's the humidity that'll get you.
It's just a dry heat.
Yeah. So how was everyone's 4th of July weekend? Good?
Dude, mine was good, man. I had 2 days off, which doesn't happen very often.
Unheard of.
So
You
I
fed boys.
Spent some time with my wife, and it was really good. Did
Hey,
some
nice,
fishing
man.
the other day. That was also really good.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
What did you catch? I saw you got a nice.
it was a bonita, but me and my buddy went out looking for tarpon and stuff. But
That thing had some really cool markings.
yeah,
on
it was fun.
like-
Catching them on fly was fun. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know. Are they in the tuna family?
they have to be. They look just like one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah,
But,
they look like mini tuna.
Yeah, but they pull on a fly rod.
Yeah?
And I was using a 7-weight fly rod, so like, it's a little bit of a battle with those guys, but it was fun, man.
Ooh, I like that whiskey.
Yeah, that's good, man.
Hold on,
Smooth.
I gotta
you
have
pouring
a
me
sip. I
some?
didn't even have a sip.
Let me take a sip.
Oh yeah, sip test.
Ooh.
Oh, it is good.
Yeah.
Really good. I mean, I've
This
had it
might be
before.
weird to say, but I feel it a lot. Not like on the nose. You know how like people say that on the nose, but I feel it like in my nose. You guys get that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like
It
not
hits
necessarily a peppery, but it kind of like
There's like no harshness to me. It's like
Yeah.
it's more
Yeah.
like caramel,
right.
a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
good.
it hits different. Like, it's good. Good.
it's not like that
It's
bullet where
different.
it just hits you like boom, right in the back of the
A
throat.
little
you
bit
know?
different.
Yeah, we're gonna try to keep it tame tonight. I don't know.
We'll
if
try.
You guys will listen to episode 6. That was a doozy. Anyway, Book, you got your notes up. You want to
Yeah.
lead us into this as always?
Yep. So the topic we're going to be discussing to begin with is Daddy D Desantis. He's been on a spree of signing those bills, turning them to extra pages in law. So he actually vetoed a couple, and one that he vetoed this past week would have allowed the expunction of juvenile non-judicial arrest records, including felonies, after they completed a diversion program. The bill was passed unanimously in the House and the Senate, and he vetoed it. And I actually have, real fast, because it's the state, so when he vetoes something, he has to write a little letter and give like a quick sentence of why he did it. So
to flex.
Yeah. So let me say. So the SB 274 proposes to allow the expunction of a juvenile's non-judicial arrest record following the completion of a diversion program for any offense, including a felony. This is Daddy D talking. I have concerns that the unfettered ability to expunge serious felonies, including sexual battery, from a juvenile's record may have negative impacts on public safety. For this reason, I withhold my approval of SB 274 and do hereby veto the same. So that was his little letter of vetotation.
It's not an invalid concern, I guess,
I kind of have to agree with that.
I don't know, 17-year-old that commits sexual assault or battery or something like that.
Right.
It's like, that's kind of riding the line between, should that stay on your record or not, right?
Yeah. I agree.
I guess if I have first thing when I read this is pure, in my mind, purely political from him. Like you guys kind of stated, it kind of makes sense why he did it and the reasoning, but for whatever reason, my mind went to this straight away was if he's going to try to be president in 2024, he signs this into law. Say something like that does happen. Now, when he's running for president, they can bring it up and say, "Hey, you signed a law, and this person got raped after."
Yeah, it always seems to be of more benefit to be able to say that you're tough on crime than to be able to say that you're light on crime.
That's it. That was exactly my...
As a re-election,
yeah.
So that's definitely...
Well, yeah, clearly. I mean, we have Kamala and Biden, two of, the hardest people on crime.
Correct.
Literally, McGruff the crime dog is president right now.
Yeah, even though, they displaced how many thousands of families, but...
No,
apparently that doesn't matter. So
yeah. Did you guys want to go into, just in case people don't know, and maybe some of us, because I kind of just a little bit, what a diversion program is?
Yeah. So let me
go ahead.
So currently, the way the system works is there is a diversion program, but it's only for misdemeanors and first-time offenses. So juveniles can go through the diversion program, which is just like some sort of, I'm guessing it's like an education program.
It's like kind of like the way I read it real fast, because it's in our, I guess it's in our state already to a certain level, but it's in other states too.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a social program, right? Mm-hmm. So so they get arrested, and instead of being booked and put into the system, they do whatever paperwork they need to do, and they hand it off to a social worker. Mm-hmm. And then, like you said, it goes through this. Either they have a pre-planned program based on the crime or whatever it is to go through, like classes and community service and all this stuff.
Yeah. So that's only available for juveniles who have a misdemeanor or first-time offense. So in those instances, they can go through this program and get it expunged from their record. But this new bill would have expanded that to include felonies and offenses beyond the first-time offense. Mm-hmm. And so that's where, DeSantis's concerns came in, especially with the felonies, I guess. The other thing that's kind of relevant about this is the two people who carried this bill and, have been pushing it for the past 3 terms are Republicans. So it's not like, DeSantis is just shooting down Democrat bills,
right? These
just
are
for the
bills coming from his side of the party.
Yeah, these are 2 Republicans that have been pushing for this for the past 3 terms since 2019, and it's been pushed. I don't think it's made it this far yet. I think this is the first time it's made it this far, so they still kind of see it as a win right now, and they're planning on getting
introducing
maybe a
it
little
again.
bit. Yeah, they're planning on maybe working with DeSantis and getting a little bit more specific on what types of crimes they want to make available for expungement, and then hopefully DeSantis will be on board.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to argue with that. I completely contradict myself when it comes to sexual crimes. Like, because I, you know, obviously I'm more of an anarchist, so I don't think that, you know, I truly feel like a criminal record is a quasi life sentence in a way. You know, you come out of prison, and you know the whole point of the prison system is it's, you know, supposed to, quote, air quotes, rehabilitate a person, right, to be reintegrated into society.
Right.
So if our prison systems, because I mean, realistically, when's the last time we've seen any sort of reform? Not at the not at the law level, like legislative level, but when's the last time we've seen any reform at the prison level? Like, when have they ever made new laws or implemented change to prisons? I can't. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't remember, since I've been paying attention to politics pretty, you know, pretty seriously. But, you know, so if the whole point of prison is to rehabilitate that person, why are we, you know, giving them this label that, you know, no one on earth will argue that it, you know, having that felon label next to your name will stop you from doing certain things in life. So why are we attaching that to people if this prison system that's supposed to rehab you, you know, does its job efficiently? And if it doesn't, you know, that's a whole nother story. But
Right.
But when it comes to sex crimes, I don't care. We can, you know, string you up by your feet and beat you with a bat, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, it's like
That's my contradiction.
well, in that case, I totally agree with you. But it's almost like the whole system as a whole. It's not. I just said a hole a lot of times there. Well, what a hole!
So many holes.
He's got his mind on holes.
But it's almost like it's not geared towards rehabilitation. It's geared towards like punishment and like
Right.
retribution.
It's like adult timeout.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty
that's
much.
a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Well, so
I really messed up.
before we get into that, because I know that that's going to be a massive
Yeah, I think
conversation. Let's I think maybe wrap.
Does it
that.
rewind a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things I just read in this new article about this particular subject was so when he came out with this veto, he had just attended the Police Chiefs Association, which is like I guess tends to be like a powerful lobbying group, and then he comes out with, you know, with his statement or his letter, you know, against this bill, which, like I said, and like everybody else I've already said, I kind of agree with some of the concerns he has, right? Just vetoing or just you know, expunging all felonies, which it. So, but there is something to be said about that, you know, because you mentioned this a minute ago, Chris, about the incentive. Like, there's no incentive to just expunge all felonies, but there's definitely an incentive not to.
A political incentive, you're saying.
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah. And the incentive obviously being tough on crime. You know, if we can continue, if that, you know, they want to look like they're tough on crime, and you know, that's sad. You know.
Just another Daddy D flexing.
Well, it's just a sad political, you know, point of view. Like instead of like you guys mentioned a second ago, just being about rehabilitating and getting people back to a place where, you know what I'm saying. It's really just about how does this look, you know?
Yep. Yeah. Like, how about instead of focusing so much on how can we keep these, you know, juveniles in the system, you know, air quotes, why not look at the system itself and let's figure out why we have such a high, what's that word for repeat offenders? What the hell's that word called?
Repeat offenders?
Yeah, well, yeah. Why do we have so much, you
Just
know,
a high rate of repeat offenders.
Yeah. Yeah, why are people, after they, you know, do what they need to do, how come they're ending up back in the system?
Yeah, and then and one of the things I think that kind of contributes to that is that, I mean, they come out of prison and a lot of them are treated
Recidivism.
Recidivism, yeah.
Sorry.
But a lot of them are treated as second-class citizens. Like you said, like they come out and they don't get all of their rights back. And it's so, you know, it's if the whole point is to rehabilitate, then why are they not able to get their rights back?
Right, and if we don't trust them with their rights, then are they really that safe to be out in public with us?
Yeah.
For example, I mean, obviously I'm speaking mainly about the Second Amendment.
Right.
If we can't trust somebody to own and possess a gun safely, what is stopping them from using a knife or a car or a homemade bomb?
And plus, we all know they can obtain a gun regardless.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
All you got to do is never mind. I can't talk about that.
No,
We
gotta
don't need to go
Mexico.
into detail about how to legally buy guns, but yeah.
You just gotta be friends with the CIA and
Yeah.
be a Mexican drug cartel.
But it's one of those things where, like we mentioned, it's a Daddy D, and this isn't not necessarily his thing. It's all politicians. They're playing the game, right? All these things he's been signing in, which are like just a crazy amount of laws. We can't even cover a tenth of what he does. It's as soon as he sees one that may have a slight possibility of coming bite him in the ass later in his political life, it's one of those things. It's like he vetoes it.
Yep.
And I think, like you guys mentioned, it's sad because whether you agree with this law fully or with some, it probably has some benefits being available, especially with juveniles. I would personally, I would think so. Even if there are like a felony, fringe cases where things might get weird, and you could let somebody off and not be a felon, and they repeat it again once they're an adult. But I would think that would be such a small population, the greater good it could have effect. That's my opinion on it. And then obviously I can go into greater detail of how probably a great factor of these juvenile cases probably shouldn't even be cases because it's victimless crimes. But
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think.
That's a good
I
point.
feel like when people feel like they're second-class citizens, they're just way more likely to like lash out and just
yeah,
do some stupid
it's
shit.
understandable.
Yeah, like I don't know if you don't feel like you're it's worth living in this society because you're being treated like crap. Like it's
Well, yeah. I mean, how long can you go being told, whether it be from potential employers or whatever, just having that label associated with your name, like you said. I mean, why bother trying to better yourself and become something more when no matter what you do and what you accomplish, that little label's still next to your name, so that's the first thing that people are going to associate you with.
Yep.
At least from a career standpoint. I know there are exceptions to that example. There are some employers that will look past that, but I think as a whole, it's probably safe to say that most people aren't going to look past that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so when he wrote that letter, they kind of responded in the sense that like they weren't necessarily going to expunge like rape and things like that, you know what I'm saying, and things of that nature. But I mean, I obviously see his concern with that. But so now they're going to come alongside him and kind of work it out and work out the details of it, which I think is probably the right move.
Yeah, they could probably get a little more specific.
Yeah. I mean, because if somebody's raping somebody, obviously don't really want that. But I think you're right, Nick. I mean,
Kill them.
that's one of those things that I don't know.
Can't have a criminal record if you're dead.
Yeah.
Rapists, at least. I'm cool with that.
Right.
Rapists, child, yeah. We could do without them.
Yeah.
They don't have a place in our society. Or any society, for that matter.
True.
I mean, I just did a quick look up like a felony in Florida, and it's felonies usually like your most serious crimes, right? Like rape, murder, assault, but also the selling of illegal drugs is a felony.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think
Drugs deemed illegal by the state.
correct. And I think we can all agree that's like, why is that a felony?
Right.
Like-
well, and it's the amount of drugs too, which is a lot of case.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean,
it could
if
be
I
like
want-
it could be marijuana. It could just be a lot of marijuana,
Yeah.
and then it becomes a felony.
I mean, I buy potato chips. I don't buy an ounce of potato chips.
And really, before
I'll buy more.
the drug war came along, the U.S. prison population wasn't that the rate wasn't nearly as high as what it is now. So, I mean, if we want to get into some numbers, we
yeah,
can get into some
hey,
numbers.
let's go for it. Let's go for it.
Do you have the numbers?
Yeah,
I
go
got
for
a
it.
ton of
Chris.
numbers.
Chris got the numbers.
So
That
total,
podcast now.
Yeah, we're that podcast. So total, there's 2.3 million prisoners in the U.S.
Golly. Is that
And-
federal?
I think that's just total.
Total? Okay.
Yeah, and that's so to put that into perspective. China, who has 4 times the population, has 1.7 million people in prison. And you know, we all think of China. They're authoritarians. They'll throw anyone in jail for anything, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
Well, apparently, that's more of a good description of the U.S.
And so mostly that's due to what they implemented in like the 1980s.
Right. Yeah. And so
Good old Reagan.
the other thing I was going to say is Cuba and Russia also both have lower rates than the U.S., which are 2 other countries that.
But
we would
and
think-
not to mention we're the highest.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're the
And not to
highest
mention what started the drug epidemic was the CIA
rate. Yeah.
selling cocaine and
Yeah,
crack.
so
Anyway,
before so the 1980s, like Cam said, is when it really started to ramp up, which was when I think it was Reagan that instituted
Yeah, it was
the
Reagan.
drug war, the drug war,
The drug war.
the drug war, and so from 1925 to 1975, the rate was actually pretty stable at about 110 people per 100,000 population. Right now, it's at 698 per 100,000
Golly.
population.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. So in 1980, there was only 30,000 people in jail for drugs. Today, there's 500,000 people in jail for drugs.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, so it's been pretty insane how they've ramped up the war on drugs since the 1980s and just locked people up for huge chunks of their life for just distributing a plant or something like that.
So just to clarify what you're saying, we are the most imprisoned nation, right?
Yep.
By like a significant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By
By
what,
a good
100
amount.
and something
Yeah.
people?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I just
Yeah.
want to make sure.
The closest one I think is
What, Russia?
Turkmenistan,
Okay.
which is a really secluded country that is they're kind of comparable to North Korea. Honestly, they have like a dictator, and in the capital, the streets are like paved in gold and stuff. Like it's one of those
God.
types of
Yeah.
not many people know a lot about Turkmenistan, but it's
I don't, that's for sure.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't even tell you where that is
and
on a map.
actually,
Is it near
there's
Turkey?
there's one place that has a higher rate, and it's so a lot of the island nations have really high rates. But if you look at it, it's like this the place St. Kitts and Nevis, they have a pretty high rate. It's 607 per 100,000 population.
That's pretty
But
comparable to
you
us.
look at what it is they have a 55,000 person population, and they have 334 people in prison.
Oh, yeah, right.
So, when you
okay.
look at it from that perspective, it's not really that much
Right.
for like, a one city. It's basically a city,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
a city of 50,000 people.
I'd probably be in jail if I was on island. Do some crazy stuff on island, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like, shit goes down on the islands.
Well,
Yeah.
some people get crazy on the island.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, just the fact that you're surrounded by water. And
Yeah.
You just get like,
Get
you're like
silly.
a cat on catnip, dude. You just want to get into things.
Yeah.
You just get silly.
Message to the West. Yeah, yeah, I'll do some crazy stuff on island, but that's besides the point.
But yes, that's basically all so the median global rate is 125 per 100,000 population. So that's pretty close to where the U.S. was before the drug war.
Right, so we're 5 times that now, 6
yeah.
times that.
Yeah. So it's it's gotten pretty bad.
Hey, we're the best in,
Oh, one other
Best
fact
country,
I
right?
wanted to throw out there, or a couple ones. So the American territories have comparably high rates. So like American Samoa has a high rate. Guam has a high rate. And you look at Samoa versus American Samoa's higher rate than Samoa. And the other thing is, if you combine all of the Americas, so North and South America, there's as many people in prison in the Americas as there are in Asia combined.
Oh, and Asia is like...
And Asia is so way more
massive.
population than
Right.
the Americas
Yeah. Wow.
combined. So it just kind of shows how the Americas has this mindset of imprisonment versus the rest of the world.
Right.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny how people look at, places like, not minimizing these places because they do very terrible things, but they look at places like you were saying, North Korea and Turkmenistan, and it's like, oh my God, how do people live like that? It's such a dictatorship, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, we have more people locked up, in cages than any country on this planet.
Yeah.
But
you know what I was thinking?
well, I guess a fair argument to that is North Korea probably just kills most of their people.
Yeah,
So-
honestly, I wanted to look it up. I don't think I saw any data for North Korea. I don't think there's any data available.
Yeah, probably not.
They
Which
don't
is
imprison
interesting,
anybody
'cause,
there.
I mean, Cuba and Turkmenistan.
Not only
yeah,
that, I wonder how
for them.
accurate the Chinese numbers are that you were reading off.
That is a
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah. We
Yeah,
know they're not always the most forthright in their statistical
So, I guess
representation of things.
to play devil's advocate, just for fun, would be, all right, so if we're going to bring it back to the veto law, or the law that was vetoed, what benefit do we have by keeping people, I guess with this law, specifically juveniles, from joining the prison system or the justice system? If they're breaking laws, shouldn't they be going to jail, and shouldn't they be going to that system so they're off the streets and they're not harming our fellow neighbors?
Yeah.
Like, what reason do we have to get them through a system that might change that or supposedly better it when, we all know people who commit crimes again?
Yeah. I mean, I guess like we've said, like the point is rehabilitation, right? Like we want people to be able to function in society without committing crimes. Obviously, there's going to be some people that it's a lost
Inherent.
cause.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do about it. They're going to commit crimes, and there's just nothing you can do. But there's other people who, they committed crimes because maybe they're in a bad economic situation, or maybe they just had a lapse of judgment, or there's plenty of reasons why people might commit a crime. But in those cases, it would suck to take a person who could be a productive member of society and lock them in a cage for 20 years and just get no benefit out of them because we're paying $25,000 a year
Right.
to keep them confined in a cage versus allowing them to
Provide
produce
something. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to kind of snowball off of what you were saying. Sorry, itching my nose. Damn it, I lost what I was going to say.
People producing stuff instead of being locked in
Yeah,
a cage.
no. What was your opening counter to that?
Rehabilitation.
Yeah. Fuck, man, I can't remember. It just completely escaped me.
That's all right. I know. I mean, so my concern. I mean, and one of the things that Chris just brought up is the fact that we pay $25,000 yearly for people to sit in a jail cell. I mean, that's not my only concern. I mean, I do want people to be really rehabilitated or also not go to prison, right? But the fact that the system right now, which has, like we mentioned before, has almost no reform, right? We send people to be locked in a cage, right? And then we pay for them to be there, and the people who they victimize, which sometimes it's nobody, right? Because it's a drug.
Most of the time, I'd
Right,
argue.
which is what is it? What is the number, Chris? 50% of the
Non-violent drug crimes.
Yeah, so, we have 500,000 people in prison today because of drug offenses. So out of 2.3 million, it's about almost 25%.
okay.
20%.
So a lot of people, right, sitting in there, and so we're paying for them to sit in there, whatever,
Because
the
they sold some
government-
drugs.
Right. So
Or in some cases did some drugs.
right, exactly. So I don't know. So this, in some kind of strange way, leads into, so one of the things obviously I was thinking about, and I'm sure you guys have this in your notes too, is restitution, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things I was thinking about, right? So the connection between someone committing an actual violent crime and having like restitution be paid to the victim, right? So this is the kind of thing I was thinking about, and this is obviously a very libertarian view. If someone actually does commit a violent crime, and the fact that they go into a prison and they just stay stagnant, and we pay for them, and in some ways you're almost being victimized twice, right? This is the idea. They violate you, whatever they may do, steal from you, whatever violent crime they, against you, and then they go into prison,
And your tax dollars pay for them.
and then your tax dollars
right.
pay for them to sit in there.
And
Really,
basically, the only benefit you get is knowing that they're being punished. Like you're
Yeah.
just like you're supposed to be comforted by that.
and that goes to another point. I feel like we're just, since this is what we know, we're just okay with it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Like because it's the system that we have in place, and everybody. Well, I don't want to say everybody seems to be okay with it, but like you said, because it's the system we've had in place for how long,
Right.
nobody's thinking of other options. Like, obviously, this is not really a viable option, but because it's been in place for so long, people think it is. It's like, man, how many decades, hundreds of thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but how many hundreds of years have, prison systems in general been a thing, and we haven't come up with, like, a better system of
Right.
getting these people, whether it be mental help or, whatever it is. And I'm not trying to sound like some crazy libertarian that's like, oh, the guy that just killed his entire family and then, ate them is like,
Just have him take a test. And
I'm not trying to sound like that, but I mean, some
Yeah.
of these are like, and I just now, my point before that kind of fleeted me was, a lot of criminals are criminals by product of, government policy. Are they not? I mean,
with the drug war, especially.
Yeah, most drug offenses,
Prohibition.
almost all drug offenses, and I would even argue gang violence because most of that is linked to drug offenses, right? I mean,
Or other black market.
any sort of prohibition. I mean, illegal guns, gangs do that. Illegal drugs, gangs do that.
That's like actually that reminds me. I just posted something today. There were police. They posted on social media recently that there were gangs in California that were selling illegal fireworks and then using the profits from that to buy illegal weapons that they were using.
Yeah.
So it just like creates this whole market that gangs can use as a source of profit. Mm-hmm. And
Any sort of
wouldn't
prohibition
exist if it wasn't for prohibition.
Yeah. It's another classic example of like government looking at the symptom and not the cause.
Yeah.
Why do we have so many people in prison?
Right.
Right? Is it the situations that certain policies have put them in?
Right.
Is it the ridiculous laws we have on the books?
Right.
Do we just like have that many criminals? Which I think most of it is because of the policies and the situations people are put in. I mean, you and I talked about this a couple weeks ago when we were, smoking cigars at your house. You almost can't.
Thanks for the invite.
We actually did invite you that day. You were not around.
Go ahead.
Dick, trying to make me feel bad. Anyway, we were just kind of talking about how like a lot of black communities, you almost can't fault the people for falling into gang and drug related dealings because you grow up in a fatherless family. Your mother might be gone most of the time trying to provide for her family. Sure. If that's the situation you're in. So I mean, if you're in a bad area, who are the role models you have?
Right.
You don't have the best schools. You're
Who are the successful people
Exactly.
in those neighborhoods?
the guys driving around in the Benzes that are slinging dope and doing that shit. So if that's your role model,
Right.
it's like how do you the only way to end that cycle is to, I mean, you got to cut the limb off at some point, right?
Right.
Like, I don't know. It's just one of those interesting things where government creates the problem,
Right.
and now it's government trying to fix it with more government. Yeah, it's like that's always the theme.
Well, so
We've said this in how many episodes now?
Yeah.
That's going to be like the running
Oh, we're
theme.
gonna keep saying it. Every
Yeah.
episode.
well, no, I don't think that's going away.
No,
but,
it's not.
But no, so I was having kind of an interesting conversation with my wife in regard to the same thing. You know, when you scale up so big, it becomes very difficult. It becomes very difficult to deal with things like as they are, you know, because there's so much bureaucracy, there's so many things that have to, you know what I'm saying? So it's easier just to say, well, there's a drug problem, instead of saying, well, there's a too much government problem.
Yeah.
Oh, well, government will never say that.
Well, I know, but I'm saying, like, once you accepted the fact that the government's so massive, you know, well,
Yeah.
I mean, we don't accept that fact, but I mean, like, as far as government,
For most people, yeah.
right. And it's like there's no way to say, well, there's no way to institute or even really project like creative solutions like we're talking about. Well, if the government wasn't as big,
We're extremists for that.
Or we didn't have ridiculous laws that send people to prison for nonviolent crimes, then maybe this would be way easier to deal with.
And with bureaucracy comes politics.
Right.
So most of these rulings and these just laws are influenced by politics, and then the people who are in the system get basically they're incentivized to convict because they get basically it looks better on their record if they have a higher conviction rate because they're a better judge or whatever. I'm
Exactly.
doing air quotes there.
Right.
Because
Right, that's the
that's
metric
just
we're using.
Yeah, that's the metric we're using is conviction rate. And so they want that to stay high. It looks good for them.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, you turn people's lives / the legal system into a game where now it's not like, let's get to the truth.
A game that you benefit from if you know if you're a politician or a judge or whatever.
Judge, yeah, it's like a game where it's literally about. It shouldn't be about like the judge needs to be right. It should be about the judge should find the truth.
Yeah, and be fair.
And be fair. It shouldn't be like, yeah, it's just you're playing a game with someone's life,
Yeah.
and it's come out especially recently now. Not to get on another tangent, but how much incorrect and false evidence gets put into cases, and people who get what is the word I'm trying to? They get put as guilty are not guilty. Convicted guilty, they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And whether it be because DNA testing's got so much better, because of our judicial system, you don't get the best defendant, depending on your
You
place.
mean like a state appointed yeah.
So, and all these things happen, and because it all compiles, and it says the game, they want to be right, and they want to convict you, and, if I could think of myself right now, if I got thrown into where I didn't do a crime, I'm saying I did, someone's telling me I did do the crime, I don't have the money to get a great defendant, I get a state, crony guy who's just, like, not good enough to be in his own business.
Yeah, we're the public defenders.
Yeah, public defenders, right?
Yeah.
And he's like,
Typically not very good.
Yeah, comes in with his suit too big.
Yeah, that's exactly what
he's got the powder on his nose, walks in.
When you say that, all I can think about is from It's Always Sunny, the uncle.
Yeah.
He's the lawyer, and he wears the big ass hand gloves.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking. So it's like, what do you do in that situation? Like, as a civilian myself, I don't know the law that well to, and if you're like
to fight for your
life, right?
Yeah.
And if you're trying to work at the same time and like all this is happening, you don't have the money. It's just like you really just get fucked. Like it's and
Oh, for sure.
and again, this all compiles where it comes down to this is a game, and they're playing a game with people's livelihoods, and again, it's coming out more and more that they're getting it wrong.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to bring up, which I've brought up multiple times in previous episodes, is, as you say, they're shooting for political goals, and it detracts from reality. And what ends up happening is we waste a bunch of resources fighting crimes that don't freaking matter. And then people, murderers are getting away, and rapists are getting away, and And all this stuff is happening in the background while our judicial system is busy chasing after a dude that sold some pot or, maybe sold some worse drugs. But, as we've said before, we don't think that's really concern. If people want that stuff, they're going to find it. So,
and my favorite thing, well, not my favorite thing, but a funny, and I know we're kind of getting, well, I guess we're not getting off track, but people always say like, oh, so one of the favorite arguments when any libertarian or anarchist brings up the fact that drug crime shouldn't be a thing is so it always goes to, oh, what about the kids, right? Like, oh, what you're okay with drug dealers maybe selling drugs to your kids? And then you think, any reasonable person, if you think about that for more than 5 seconds, it's like, this is a pretty small town we live in. There's some pretty, there's not like crazy bad drugs, but you can get pretty much anything here. And I was exposed to most all of it by high school. I didn't do it, or I did not do those, extreme drugs because, it was,
like not present.
Right. I didn't.
If you wanted to, right?
I could have if I wanted to. It's not that it's not that I didn't do them because there was a loss. Like, and I know you said this, Cameron, in a previous episode. I did it because that's how I was raised. I was raised like, hey, maybe don't do meth. It's not really the best thing for you.
Right.
It'll probably fuck your whole life up.
I think relevant thing to bring up is this came up on Dave Smith's podcast recently. So.
Our Lord and Savior.
Yeah, who's the guy who ran for Libertarian president? Gary
Johnson.
Gary Johnson, yeah.
So he was pressed on drug war questions, and they asked him, so you think heroin should be legal? And he was like, he kind of backed off. He was like, yeah, no, maybe drugs like heroin could have some sort of regulation, blah blah blah. So that just kind of goes to show you what like a half-assed libertarian looks like, but. You look at Ron Paul, he was at a Republican debate in South Carolina, one of like the most conservative states in the union, and he was asked, so you think heroin should be legal? And he looks at the crowd and he goes, how many of you guys, if heroin was legal tomorrow, would do heroin?
Yeah.
And the entire crowd just like stood up and applauded at that because it made
it's
them realize,
spot on.
Made them realize, it doesn't change a thing.
Yeah.
If you want heroin, you're gonna get heroin.
Ask the audience, right? Would you do heroin?
Yeah.
If it was legal?
Yeah.
No. Why?
Exactly.
Because you're a functioning citizen of society.
Yeah, exactly.
And heroin is gonna
fuck your whole life up.
Yeah. So you're not gonna do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if there's a law or not.
The same people that are doing it now are if it becomes legal, will continue doing it.
Exactly.
The same people that are not are gonna continue not doing it.
Yeah.
So God, I can't. I hate when those arguments spring up.
Yeah, I just want to shout out real fast. I was touching on like wrongful convictions and stuff. A guy named Joe Rogan. I don't know if you guys ever heard of him. He was on the Fear Factor a while ago.
Heard of him. Oh yeah, the Fear Factor guy. I remember
Yeah.
that
Oh
guy.
yeah, the
Fear
short
Factor
little stocky dude.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a gentleman he's had on his podcast a couple times now is Josh Dubin. He's an ambassador for the Innocence Project. And the Innocence Project, what they do is they get lawyers and they go and find people who have been wrongfully convicted and they get them out of jail.
That's badass.
Yeah, it's really super cool. So Josh Dubin, the Innocence Project.
I feel like I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's getting more popular now. And an interesting thing that, just kind of listening to him talk and what they've done is a lot of the sciences, or like in quotation sciences, they used in cases for a long time now. There's really no
Go ahead.
There's really no like hard evidence for it, for the science. So it's kind of like, it's not like a hard science. In fact, like blood splatter.
Wait, are you anti-science, Boogie?
I'm anti-bullshit. So like,
No, I know what you mean though, because blood spatter, right? There's no like.
there's
I mean, there's physics you can tie it to, but
there's
even
physics,
that
but even
is
then, like I think what they're saying is it's not an actual like
tangible.
truth. Yeah, like,
right. Yeah.
What they do is they get experts in the fields, right? In quotations.
Air quotes.
Air quotes, yeah. And these experts,
They wear
and they've
white
done
lab coats.
Yeah, and they've done studies or whatever, a study for them, and they'll get actual experts to say, "Oh yeah, we know what blood splatter and how to use that for crimes and tell what's going on." They'll show them like 10 different ones, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's for this," and it's completely wrong.
Yeah.
So it's just these. It's kind of
Oh, the Innocent Project does this. They get these
They'll
people
say that's
on
like
and-
a knife slash or something.
yeah. So they've done this and they fought this in the courts and
Yeah.
where they fought it they've actually got it overturned.
Yeah, I think the only blood spatter analyst I would trust is probably Dexter,
Yeah,
and he's a fictional character. So
I knew you were
Yeah.
going to say that.
and also a serial killer. So
And also the
know
guy
what
who
that says
shot
about
Bin
me.
Laden. The guy who shot Bin Laden, I think I'd trust him on.
oh, that guy's such a fuck. He's such a fucker.
I honestly have no idea who he is.
He's that tall. Apparently, I mean, that's all like most
that's
of that
up
is
in
still
the air
classified. So but this is the guy that came out publicly and claimed he was the one to do it.
Oh, so it's probably
And
not
a
him.
lot of a lot of SEALs like still active duty, like do
Call-
not fuck with that guy.
call bullshit.
Yeah, they're like, nah, he's a fucker.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, so it was just interesting. Josh Dubin, kind of look it up. It's kind of ties in this whole justice system where what a lot of court cases use to convict people is just bullshit. And it's like, again,
as far as the science goes,
as far as the science goes, and it's being used as hard fact.
Well,
And again, if you're a person, like a normal citizen, most people in the world or in the United States, if you're up in this case and they have like, oh, we got the blood splatter, we have this, we have that.
and you have a guy who's an expert telling you that's definitely a knife
Yeah.
slash or
Like,
it's
what
whatever it is.
even if you're a lawyer, how do you argue that?
Yeah.
I mean,
You know what I
again-
mean?
Again, especially you have to be a good lawyer.
Like you basically just have to be like, that guy's full of shit.
yeah, and you would have to like.
I know he's a scientist, and this is what he's devoted his career to, but he's full of shit. To the jury, they're going to be like, "Oh, this lawyer is full of shit."
Yeah. So again, it's like you have to get a really good lawyer, and with our system how it is, it's just very hard to do so
It's not going to happen.
based on if you're just a normal person.
Right.
If you don't
And-
have money,
and you
you're
could-
not getting a good lawyer.
Yeah, and you could, you could extrapolate, and we brought this up in multiple episodes. Why is there one system of justice? Why is there one justice system?
It's because the government says we have to.
Yeah, exactly. That's what the point I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And obviously, the justice system that they came up with kind of fucking sucks.
Yeah, there's definitely more to go on that.
Hey man,
Yeah.
it only
So-
sucks if you're, if you're actually
Hey man, just don't break the law.
Yeah, exactly. Don't break the
Yeah.
law and you're fine.
Well, you know what? Like you said, it sucks if you're poor, right? And you grew up in a place where your role models are drug dealers, and you get caught up in the wrong business, right? And you don't have anybody to defend you. That's when it sucks.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That's like when it most sucks. But even if
Yeah.
you don't grow up in a terrible
Right.
neighborhood and you're like, you just want to smoke weed like 15 years ago and you get caught.
Right.
like,
Right.
Hey, if you don't like the system, you just gotta vote.
yeah.
Just get out there and vote,
I don't know.
brother.
Oh,
Just gotta
God.
vote.
I'm having deja vu.
Yeah.
And I know what a lot we've been talking about too is, felonies and which is kind of why we talk about drugs because it over a certain limit is a felony, which is ridiculous. But even misdemeanors, like we could go on to that and how
Yeah.
that's like another it's not as again it just leads more into crimes that don't affect people that you're being punished for.
Yep.
So,
Extortion.
on that note, I got something to mention before anybody else. The minimum mandatory sentence. Have you guys talked about? I mean, I know Chris. He mentioned this a minute ago. We obviously read the same article, but this idea that the mandatory minimum sentences on drug charges and things like that.
Yeah.
So what happens with that is people with drug charges, depending on how much drugs, which drugs they have, and I actually have a list, and it's pretty interesting actually, because you can go through like how much marijuana you're allowed to have, whatever. And so what happens is they instituted this law, and it is a law in Florida, is that if you have so much of whatever drug, your mandatory sentence is 3 years and higher, right? And so the judge isn't allowed to really use discretion on this. It's like out of his hands at this point, right?
Right.
So,
It's like
so-
in a book somewhere written. This
right.
is the
So
gospel.
he can't really make a decision based on discretion. He has to say, okay, this is 3 years and above, right? And so what ended up happening with this, right, is because this is a law, like violent crimes and real crimes, as we would probably, mention it, get
Crime
kind of
is person and property, you know.
right. Yeah, exactly. Would get pushed to the side because people have to go to jail for having too much marijuana or something on them because of this law. I mean, it's nonsense like this, but it's nonsense that the government's so big and institutes laws like this one that make people who should really actually be in jail, right?
Right, it minimizes their what
Exactly.
They get. Yeah.
And the reason that happens is because there's such an overpopulation in jails because we have so many people in jail because of drug charges that you have to really actually make a decision like, do we send this person to jail or not? Because there's really not room. Am I right, Chris?
Right.
There's not room. There's
No.
not room. There's no. I mean, they're at the point where they're having to build more prisons because the larger the government gets, the larger the laws get, the more we enforce them because, like Chris mentioned earlier, there's more incentive to do it than less incentive not to do it. And so as they grow, you get to this. It's oh man, it's a really bad system.
Yeah, it's a compounding system.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good spot to mention because you talked about just overcrowding and all that. Is this has led to the rise of a lot more private prisons, and private in quotation marks as usual.
Yeah.
So yeah, the private prisons are a lot more common now, and they've been the point of a point of contention for people like Bernie Sanders and AOC and people like that who they'd rather see people in government prisons, and some of their arguments are, things to the effect that, private prisons are motivated by profit more than a public prison would be, things like that. There's probably a lot of other ones, but so, I mean, basically the profits are privatized from this system, but the costs are still socialized. These private prisons, their contracts are all paid by the government. All of their operating procedures are stipulated by the government. So really these private prisons are only private in the sense that they're owned by a private company, but they're told what to do by the government.
And funded by the government.
And they're funded by the government. And so they basically become a stooge of the government in that respect.
Private in quotations, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Right. Exactly.
Private nonsense.
I feel like you can't say private in this country without putting it in quotations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But think about a system.
You can't even,
So-
your daughter can't even open a lemon stand without being hassled by the police.
Yeah. So the other thing I was going to say was one of their concerns about it is that private lobbying will they'll lobby to keep the prison populations high. So, that's a valid concern that, if the prisons are run by private owners, that they're going to try and keep their populations high so they can keep the money flowing in. Well, how is that different from the incentives of a public prison? Because if you cut down on the amount of inmates in a public prison, suddenly you don't need as many guards. Suddenly you don't need as many nurses. Suddenly you don't need so all these people start losing jobs, right?
Right.
It's the same incentives, but just in a different sector.
Yeah, in a different, you're right.
Because what we really like to see when you say private, or, I mean, a really private, but like the idea of and I talked about this a minute ago, is like restitution, like whether people getting paid for the crime that was convicted against them, right? Like the fact that you steal from somebody, whatever it may be, or you violate somebody's property rights in some way, and you go to prison, you should have to pay. You know what I'm saying? You should have to pay that person for the crime that you did against them, and also you should have to pay
Provide
your way
value.
in prison. Why should we have to pay for you to sit in prison?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So private, I don't know
Yeah.
what sense it sounds very strange. Doesn't really make any sense. It actually sounds.
Yeah,
Super
and
strange.
a case in Florida that involves private prisons was in 2012 when Rick Scott was governor. There was a plan to transfer 14,000 inmates from Florida state prisons to private prisons. and there was a intense amount of lobbying done that was, it dwarfed anything that a private, corporation could have ever done, because it involved all of these unions of workers who work in the public prisons. And basically what was going to happen whenever 14,000 inmates were transferred from state prisons to private prisons was that 3,000 prison guards were going to lose their jobs. And so there was a very aggressive lobbying effort launched, and it ended up being canceled. They didn't transfer those prisoners. They kept them in state prisons.
This ad is for all the followers who take exercise, especially weightlifting, seriously. Lifting weights can be tough on your body, and especially on your hands. Not everyone has rough and rugged man hands, and hey, that's okay. What Bitch Mitts has created is a lifting mitt that utilizes the patented Pillow Soft technology to protect those dainty little boy hands of yours. Gone are their days of boo-boos and ouchies from lifting those big meanie weenie iron weights, and hello are the days of hands that stay manicured after a heavy deadlift session. If you're not a complete Chad, absolutely stacked to the hilt with massive bicep peaks that would make Mount Everest blush, then Bitch Mitts might be for you. Politics on the Rocks is happy to announce that Bitch Mitts, along with Tampax, have teamed up together to offer Politics on the Rocks listeners 20% off with code I'm a bitch 20. I'm a bitch 20. And again, that's I'm a bitch 20 for 20% off Bitch Mitts and a promotional pack of Tampax. That's pretty good, man.
Freaking
So, of course, with that being said, we don't want to be that podcast where we just bitch about what's wrong without offering up, some sort of solution. So I guess this is the part where we're going to kind of jump into some of the anarchist / libertarian / centrist kind of ideas of, how we can get away from this prison system that is in place that's clearly not working. So, you guys have any ideas, or you want me to kick this off?
Hold on, Chris.
I threw up in my mouth a little bit when you said centrist. That's all I'm gonna say.
I'm like, who is that?
I don't know why I said that.
I was wondering.
I got into in my mind I was like, all right, I need to list things, and 2 is not a list, that's a pair. So I was like, I need to think of something else, and I'm like,
No, but so something I wanted to mention before we got into solutions is a lot of people, maybe before listening to this, don't even see these things as issues, right? Because we've kind of accepted the idea of what we have today. This is the way it works. People go to prison for doing the wrong thing, and you feel good about the fact that they're there, and whatever.
Right, it's like such a norm now.
Yeah, so the idea with it when we bring up these libertarian and anarchist ideas
And
about
centrist.
I don't know who that person is yet. But when we bring up these ideas,
Bill Clinton.
it's a challenge. It's to challenge these ideas that have already been in place, that are terrible ideas, as we mentioned already, because of the staggering
The implications of it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it's a challenge for the listener to say, okay, yeah, maybe these ideas do suck. Mm-hmm. Maybe they do have a point. Okay, so what are the solutions to the point? And so, go ahead, Chris.
Well, and it's worth mentioning because of what you just said, that this is established ideas. The modern prison system, it wasn't even really developed until the late 1700s. Mm-hmm. So really before that, we didn't have anything like this. It was, I think, Jeremy Bentham, who's the father of utilitarianism, who really came up with this system when he wrote the Panopticon, which is that, do you guys know what that is? Where it's basically it's the system of prison where there's a giant circle and all the inmates are on the wall. So you picture you're in a cylinder, all the inmates are on the wall, and in the middle there's a big tower where you can view every single inmate from the tower.
Anybody who's playing Warzone knows exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
Not based on what you said, but based on the visual that you're giving them.
And you mentioned like utilitarianism being that this is the best for the most amount of people.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So just to clarify.
All I got from that is Chris wants us to go back to living in the 1600s.
Yes.
1700s.
Well,
Early 1700s.
yeah, so maybe late 1600s. Yeah. No, so the
Go
only,
fight with flintlocks.
yeah. Though I guess just before we get into to add on to what Cameron's talking about, as we're going to be discussing these ideas to kind of what we think would be better and hopefully bring about better change, not just with our judicial system, but overall life for people who do get wrapped up into this day in, day out, but is something we may have said multiple times in the podcast already, but just to reiterate, so again, so you can kind of think about it while we discuss these things. If someone is not harming you or harming somebody else, and they're just doing something that could possibly hurt themselves only, why should they be, even just fined, go to jail, or go to prison for it?
Right.
Yeah, like drunk driving.
Exactly. I mean, I would stand for it, but that's a slippery slope to kind of get out of people. But
I love that meme where it's like,
he's like, drunk driving is a victimless crime, and then somebody comments like, yeah, until you hit somebody and kill the entire family inside the minivan. And he's like, well, that's drunk crashing, which I'm very against.
It's a meme, but it's true. But yeah, so again, these victimless crimes, which, speeding, you don't hurt anybody when you speed. Because when you hit somebody, that's a totally different thing.
Well, yeah, and I was gonna kind of comment like why like we've gotten into this path, this like this way forward of charging people for like preemptively for crimes.
Sure.
Like it's almost like
Minority Report
thought crimes. You know what I mean? Like
it's not the speed that kills; it's the sudden stop.
Yeah.
literally, yeah.
So
That's a good point.
Yeah, so again, I just want to just let people think about this when we're talking about a lot of this comes down for some of us, victimless crimes, things that don't affect people, really just affect the person themselves, and they're being prosecuted, they're being attacked, fined for these things, and they should not be.
Right.
Again, even if you're looking at something like, kind of out there, but drunk driving or even just speeding, they're similar in the absence where if you're speeding, you're not hurting anybody. But once you do hurt somebody, that's not speeding. That's something else. And yes, that is when you actually take someone the right away. And you should
It's negligence.
Yes.
You killed somebody because you were speeding.
Correct.
Right.
The speeding was part of it, but
Right.
how many people speed every day and don't hit anybody?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's something I want to throw in there.
Right.
Yeah,
Something to think
good
about,
point. Good point.
for sure.
Yeah. So confirmed, Bookie's okay with killing people.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point though, because like, and this kind of starts to tread, I know we're supposed to be talking about solutions, but obviously we have more to say. This kind of starts treading into the whole like, thought policing and like how, like, why are hate crimes a thing? I don't think hate crimes should exist. I think
Crime is a crime.
Yeah, crime is a crime.
Doesn't matter why you did it.
Doesn't matter the motivation. If you killed somebody, if you kill somebody, you killed somebody. If you killed somebody because they were black or Asian or white or whatever, doesn't matter. You still killed somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it a separate charge based on?
Why does that make it worse?
Yeah, how does it make it worse? Not only does it, like it just doesn't make sense, but you're minimizing. Okay, if it's not a hate crime, it's not as bad.
Right.
Oh, so you're going to tell me the guy that just killed my father or my brother, or whoever it was, if he was a family member, you're going to tell me that crime isn't as severe because it wasn't motivated by some, racial hatred or,
Right.
Whatever type of hatred.
Sure.
So yeah, I feel like, what you were just talking about, Bookie, is kind of the same thing. It's like almost like thought policing. Like when people speed, they're not speeding because they want to inflict damage on people. They're just speeding because either they're an asshole or they're in a rush.
Or they're driving at appropriate speed for them that they think is fine.
Yeah.
Or they live in Miami.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going down
Twice
the
the
road
speed limit.
at 45 and it's at 35, and the kid kicks the ball and runs in the street, it's not my fault.
Oh, God. Oh no!
You should get better parents. That's
And we're
easy enough to
demonetized. I don't
Put
think we
up a
have an
fence.
episode yet that wouldn't have gotten us demonetized if we were on like a monetized platform,
understand. If
which we are.
If we were able to
Just
be
just so our
monetized.
followers know, we make at least 300,000 each for an episode.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
All right,
so when
Chris.
Bookie says some off the wall shit like that, it really hurts us. Anyway. So yeah, solutions.
Yeah.
Did
I
we
mean,
talk about a single solution yet? No, I don't
Well,
think
we
so,
were
right?
talking about restitution.
Yeah, I brought that
Yeah,
up like
yeah.
10 times.
I think Chris
Yeah,
had
which
something
is
he wanted to get into.
which is a great, great starting point for what libertarians want to see from the justice system as opposed to what we see nowadays. So, under a system where we're talking about restitution versus retribution, which is what we have now, under a restitution based system, you're paying back the victims for the damages or the crime that you committed. Maybe it's not always, if you murder someone, it's kind of tough to pay their family back for that. It's
How do you put
it's
a
heavy
dollar price on
Are you saying my grandfather was just his body is just a worth amount of money?
Right. Well, yeah, there's a whole system for that where like a human life is worth like $1 million, I think. In traffic design, that's what we like. Well, we didn't use that, but that's what the government uses whenever they're like, should we put a guardrail here? It's like, well, how much does it cost? How many lives would it save?
Oh yeah, they use that same type of system with
Right. So if the cost is higher than the amount of lives it could save,
Yep.
then it doesn't go in.
recalls, like automotive recalls and
Yeah.
shit like that.
Wait, so how much are we worth?
It's 1 million.
I'll look it
I
up.
will say 1.5, but it's
How would I even look that up?
just look up like value of a human life? I'm pretty honestly, I'm pretty sure that will come up. There's a whole
Turn the safe search off.
Yeah. It's funny though because I engineer for I'm not gonna say it, but we do airplanes.
Mhm.
The FAA does not do that. The FAA does not value human lives in that way. It's all or nothing.
So I guess the only reason I did that little quirk out there was just because that's an argument that you get from people with restitution is, well, now everything's just about money, and if you're just going to think about lives as money or this is money, isn't that like harsh or
right.
coarse?
But yeah, exactly. So that comes back to what we were saying earlier, where we're paying for these people to be in jail, and so we're all losing money on them being punished. And basically, the only thing we're supposed to feel good about is the fact that they're being punished
Yeah.
while we're paying for
That's
it.
not enough.
And so, a much better way of doing that would be to impel, or what was it called? Compel.
Impel?
Okay, yeah, impale. Impale the criminal.
Yeah.
No, compel.
Not a bad idea.
Sorry,
Back to the
compel is the word
1600s.
I'm looking for. Compel the criminal to pay back the family, whether it's in money, if that's possible, or if that's not possible, then in services. The literal indentured servitude could be a way of having criminals pay back the families of victims.
Well, dude, are you talking about slavery?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, it's interesting.
But it's not. Yeah, that's a pretty valid point. If you,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I don't see anything wrong with that. If you steal or take the life of somebody in your family, and if we're talking restitution wise, if you can't afford that with actual cash, well, you can work for it,
Yeah.
right?
And I mean, obviously, you probably don't want to see the person who murdered your brother or whatever, like on a daily basis. So obviously, you don't want this person to be like a servant, like in your household or something like that. But they could be doing something that all the profits go to you,
Right,
You
like,
know,
yeah.
they could be actually producing something, which goes back to what we were talking about
I
earlier.
totally agree.
Where instead of locking them in a cage, we could make them productive, which is kind of what's happening. But all the products of that productiveness go to the state, not to the
victim, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So again, this is very interesting. I like this discussion. To kind of play a little devil's advocate here, in some sense, not in some sense, but in other areas of the law, we have really something similar, right? Child support,
Mhm.
where typically it's the father because men are
Yeah,
pigs.
but can you fairly not to cut you off, but can you fairly call that restitution?
Well, it's not necessarily, but I'm getting to the point to where you're making someone pay something to another person, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a lot of that, not a lot. I'll say a lot. I don't know what the actual breakdown is, but you hear people always say, "Well, he doesn't pay what he's supposed to."
Yeah, maybe you do hear that.
So, if we're going through this restitution thing, and we're just going to play with what we've been talking about, which is, if you kill somebody, and now you have to, pay them back for the death of who you killed.
How do you ensure that they pay that?
Correct, right? And
well, I think what Chris said is probably off the top of my head, the only argument that I can think of, right? The whole indentured servitude.
What about payments?
Yeah.
Because that's what you do with child support. You just pay every month.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
how do you enforce that, right?
Yeah. It's either they could live, on their own and work and as they would normally, and then most of their income goes to the victims that they are still paying a debt to, or they literally all their money goes to the debt until it's done. Yeah. I don't know the way the system. I mean, this would be a thing that would be litigated between the parties, between the victim and the criminal.
Of course, you'd come
without the state.
Yeah, you'd be
in a private litigation system.
Yeah, you'd have your litigators go through and be like, okay, I'm fine with him paying $200 a month for X amount of years or until he's dead.
Yeah, like this is the sum of money that we're
Correct.
owed, and however,
if you're fine with the payment plan, you're fine.
Yeah.
And then we talk about that's my. If I had an issue with that's my biggest issue is how do you ensure that gets paid?
To cut you off, to snowball off what you're saying to further advocate this devilness. So say you do come to this agreement, right? Where let's just use the example Chris was saying, where whoever perpetrated the crime pays the victim $200 a month, whatever it is. What happens when he doesn't do that?
Okay, so and to interject, the way I look at this, if you commit a crime, like as far as like murdering somebody, you should still be in prison. Like I don't want people who murder people not to be in prison. I'm totally okay with them being locked in a jail cell.
I think I'd agree with that.
So the way in my mind, the way I would institute this is that they would be in a prison cell, sure, but they would also work within the prison, like in the system, like in a private prison where they do actually work, and they institute like different, like have a business come in to do whatever.
Yeah, they like leave to work and then they come back to prison.
Exactly. So that's the way they would pay, and that's the way you would institute it, right?
Yeah, I guess that's a good.
Yeah, and in the same way, I also think that they should pay for their stay.
Yeah,
if they're gonna get the. If they're going to stay in the long vacation at the prison cell, I don't think I should have to pay for it.
No.
In any manner. I think they should have to pay for it and also pay for the restitution of whoever the crime they're against. Right. That's the way I think of it, And I think when that's fulfilled, then maybe they should get out.
And I remember months ago, somebody, one of the very hyper-liberal friends that I have posted something where I can't remember what state it was, but they made it legal for air quotes private contractors to work with these prisons to basically use the inmates' labor as a source of. So for instance, let's say a gravel company. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how this works. I don't know the gravel industry, but let's say the gravel industry, they could contract with these prisons to have the inmates work, and basically they get the product of their work, and they obviously negotiate some sort of deal. But a lot of the hyper liberal side will disagree with that, saying that not only are they in prison now, but now they're basically slaves also. But it's also
but
going back to what you
pay them like they would pay a normal employee.
Exactly, right. Like going back to what you're saying, if they're staying in these cells, eating on our dime, living on our dime, air conditioned on our dime, Like, why is it on? Why does it have to be on our dime?
Yeah.
I didn't commit the crime. They committed the crime. Let them work to pay for that.
I don't
you
want
know.
I don't want to pay them to get raped.
It's the price you pay to live in a civilized society, Nick.
Hey, man, our Bubba's embraced.
Well, I mean, from that, you know, like, in some ways we're, I guess, harder from some position, but also a lot lighter from other positions, because we don't think violent crime should be a law, and it should be, people should be in prison for it. But also, when you are in prison for a violent crime, you should pay. You should have to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So in some ways, we're I mean, I don't know, more extreme. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe also not as extreme.
just the fact that we want to like collect rainwater makes us extreme, Cameron.
Yeah. Well,
No, so it's to go back to the retribution thing where, so I agree with Cameron, and I think we might have heard this from the similar person, where if you're in a prison and you should owe the retribution to somebody, you should be doing a job in prison. Like he said,
Which
And-
I could be wrong is already the case to a certain degree.
yeah,
I think they
I don't know
have,
I don't know the in and outs of that, and like I've always
Yeah.
heard they get paid like pennies on the dollar supposedly.
yeah,
and,
but
like,
they're not paying back anybody.
correct. It's just going. But we're saying you're doing this to pay someone back.
Yeah.
But like Cameron specified, we're not doing this so you murder somebody, you still have to go home. You just paid $200 for murdering somebody.
No,
a month.
not a,
No,
not a thing.
yeah,
no,
you
no.
still have to pay the time in the prison
right.
because you're obviously can't be a part of society
Yeah,
based on if
you
you
got
murder
some
someone.
In
you got
that
some
case,
issues
yeah.
you need to
Yeah.
figure out. Yeah,
Correct.
In
so
that case, but maybe in other more minor infractions, you actually would live at home and you would work. Just
right.
a
Like
normal-
you got
just
into
like
a drunk
normal
brawl at
person.
the bar. Like
Yeah, just
you don't
like
need
a
to be
normal
in prison
person
for that.
would be living. You know, you're
yeah,
working,
yeah.
you're living
Again,
at home,
and we're talking
but
about murder, which
you're paying
I think
part of it.
for most of us. That's the highest you could do
Right.
Yeah,
to wrong somebody.
yeah.
Sure.
So again, and I think if we looked at the
I think
statistics,
it's
murder.
child stuff trumps that for me. But
Well, I mean, it's pretty much murder.
well, yeah, I guess it depends on what you're talking about. But
Yeah, but I mean, it's on par with murder because you're
Right.
taking away someone's property right
yeah.
of their own body. But
I'm very contradiction of myself when
But-
it comes to children.
so if this is like the main thing we have people staying in prisons for, that's like this. I don't think it's the smallest percentage of people in prison, but it's one of the smallest for actual like murder and sexual offense.
Mm-hmm.
So we wouldn't have as many people in the actual prison system itself.
No,
Right.
much smaller.
But I think
25% smaller, right?
well,
At least.
just from that, which
Yeah,
is
just-
drugs,
yeah.
but much for other things like
Right.
like tax evasion and
Small batter. Like
Yeah.
stupid. You got into a fist fight
Yeah.
with,
I mean, I guess something to not
your old lady was talking back.
yeah, not like a tangent, but like
I'm just kidding.
The
I'm
big-
just kidding.
real
Don't hit
backhand.
women. Don't hit women.
the big
Bad.
meme around going on was what that why can't I pronounce that?
Murray?
McAfee
McAfee was going to go away in prison for how long? And the
for the rest of his life.
Oh, dude, the IRS killed him. No matter how you look at it, if no, I'm being, I'm
No,
cutting you
'cause
off. I'm cutting
even
you
if
off.
they didn't literally,
I'm cutting you
kill
off
him.
because I have a point.
No, he was going to be in life for not paying taxes.
I'm supposed to be cutting you
but
off.
Chauvin, the guy who killed George Floyd, was only going to get 25 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So that's like the big dismemberment. Like, and this is
Yeah.
why we would see Chauvin being in our system in prison for longer and paying, where McAfee would.
yeah. Now I'm going to cut you off.
There you
so, regardless if you believe he
Good
actually
point.
killed himself, which I do not. I mean, there's over the last year he's tweeted like 5-6 different times. If I die, if I air quote kill myself, it was not me. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna listen to him. So I truly don't think he killed himself. But regardless, if you believe that he killed himself or not, at the end of the day, you can still basically reduce it down that the IRS is responsible for his death, right? If he was,
Well, he wouldn't have been on the run. He wouldn't have been
exactly,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah, he would not be in the situation he was if it wasn't for these ridiculous tax laws or taxes. Period. So at the end of the day, you can surmise his death to the IRS. The IRS killed him. Maybe not indirectly,
either way.
but
Probably.
I mean, he is a product of his death is a product of the IRS.
The tax system. Yeah.
And I will
No, you're good.
I will die on that hill.
So I think
Don't tell me I'm good. I know I'm good.
No, we're all good. So if we're
I know I'm good. Oh no, I'm good, motherfucker.
if we're covering, murder, again, you go to prison because you can't be part of society. You have to pay for your stay, so you're doing some type of job that's linked to that prison. Hopefully, there's a couple choices. Let's give a little variety, and then because not everybody can break up gravel as efficiently, and then
We can figure out something for them.
yeah, of course. And thirdly, you're paying who you've wronged. So the family that you've killed someone from, and I think that's a reasonable solution.
I do too.
Yeah, I think if you were to truly let the free market, a truly free market, not free market air quote capitalism that we have today, but I think if you were to let the free market run with the prison systems, I think you'd see a system where kind of going off what you guys in regards to restitution, I think you'd see whoever owns these prisons, whether it be a person or a major corporation, so you'd have CEOs, they would make good business deals where these families or these victims would get the restitution and these prisoners would pay their way through prison. And I think, you don't get to that position to own a prison or any major, corporation without being smart, right? You're going to figure a way out to make some money off of it, which is fine. I think, that's completely, I'm completely okay with that. If you have a system where these victims are getting a little money, whatever, whoever, decides what that money is, if you have a system where they're getting that money, the prisoners are paying their way, I'm completely okay with you making a couple bucks off of it. Yeah, that's awesome. So I think if you let the free market really run with that, I think that it would naturally, you would naturally see a system come together that, you'd have all three of those things where people are making profit, which is, I don't know why that's such a bad thing.
Profit's a bad word.
Yeah, really. I don't think that's a bad thing, but you would see, CEOs, owners, whatever it may be, you'd see them making money, which is good. You'd see families and victims getting paid for restitution, like we talk about. And you'd see the prisoner, the person who perpetrated these crimes, paying their way through. And I think ultimately that's a better rehabilitation than what we have now, right? I mean, with the system that I was just explaining, these people are, I can't think of a better way for them to take responsibility of their actions, right? They're literally paying for all of it, whether it be time in prison. Well, it's a combination of time in prison, work to pay their dues as far as living, and work to pay back, the damage that they've caused a lot of these families or victims. So, yeah, I think that's a good idea. And if it didn't work out that way, I think we would see, excluding restitution, which I agree. I think that's a great system. But if we're not talking restitution, or even if we are, I think we'd see also a lot of other, again, this is, you have to have a truly free market economy for this to work, a free market capitalist system. I think you'd see a lot more companies coming forward with rehabilitation centers that actually work. And I think you'd see a drastic decrease in recidivism. And
yeah, but why would a company do that? Like, what's the incentive for them?
Well, it's the same thing. I imagine it would be the same thing. You'd still have, if you have somebody in this, and when I say rehab for this argument, I'm not talking like a halfway house like, we have today where families pay for their drug addict, family member to go and get help. I'm talking, you have a murderer or whatever. You'd still have kind of the same situation where they have to work to pay their dues.
Okay.
They're still kind of, like you were saying, Chris, indentured servitudes. But I think you'd see a lot better structure of, true rehabilitation type education that gets these people the help they need to not, kill people again. Well, maybe that's the extreme case, but I think you'd see these companies having better programs that decrease recidivism. And, you said, well, what's the incentive to that? Well, I mean, regardless of the prison system we have today, we still have a lot of new offenders, right? First-time offenders. That's not like
Sure.
that. I don't know the true statistics on it, but I don't think that number is dropping. So it's not like these rehab facilities would have like a decrease. Like it's not like they'd have like less people coming in. I mean, recidivism wouldn't ultimately drive this because people are still committing crimes, but you'd be creating competition in the free market because you'd have multiple companies trying to do this, and it's like, okay, well, this company has the best or the lowest recidivism rate, so obviously they have the best rehab system in place, right, for these inmates. I don't know. Maybe I'm being way too optimistic with that example, but
I don't know. But I mean, to go back to the root of this thing, the whole point of having a system in place to determine what a criminal is going to compensate victims and things like that is to prevent the reality that if you commit a crime against someone, and if that victim is still alive or if their family is still alive after the fact, you're gonna get just natural instinct of retribution. Like if there's no system in place to pay the victims back, what's going to happen is those people are going to find a way to pay themselves back, and they're going to either find that person that wronged them and kill them or hurt them or get what they want out of them, and they're going to do that on their own accord. And that's what we're trying to avoid with these systems in place that determine what the consequences are, and it prevents just feuds from propping up. And this goes back to early American history when we didn't have such a robust judicial system.
Yeah, was it the McCoys and
the Hatfields and McCoys? Like it's just
Hatfields,
a great example of what happens whenever you have no system in place. You end up with like a 100 years long war between families where they're just killing each other because, hey, you killed my cousin 50 years ago, so now we're going to kill you. And then, now you killed my cousin, so we're going to come back and kill one of yours. And so it just keeps going and going until...
I'm going to be the guy to say it. I'm okay with that system. Just some old cowboy shit. I'm okay with it.
Just that Appalachia justice.
That's it.
Appalachia justice. I know someone just screamed.
Just screamed when you said that. Mike and Jana just freaked out. Appalachian.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's what happens when there's no system in place. So it's important to have some sort of system to mediate these arguments and these criminal acts, and just get people paying what they owe, and get real restitution for victims instead of just letting people fester with their anger
and
just
and to be clear, when you say systems, we're not talking state or federal government implemented systems.
No, definitely not.
I'm just clarifying for our listeners so they don't think.
No, absolutely.
Because you and I are the anarchists, bro. We gotta stay true to our.
No, it's like I said earlier. It's a litigation between the victim and the criminal, and
voluntary.
Right.
It's a big,
and there needs to be systems in place, private systems in place to determine what the consequences are going to be, and things like that.
Boys, this whiskey's going down way too easy tonight. I don't know what the hell happened.
I'm not messing with it. I got plenty over here.
I did too, and then I drank it all.
No, so, I don't know, you got something, Book?
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead.
I think we've kind of hit that one pretty good when it comes to, like, restitutions, and we mainly talked about it again in the general sense of, like, one of the worst things you could do, which is murder. Another solution I have, I think we've talked about it a little bit, would just be not imprison anybody for non-violent crimes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I think
I mean,
we're all on the.
Yeah, I mean,
page
just
of
a quick look. It looks like depending on the year, it ranges anywhere from like 30 to like 40% of people in prison are nonviolent offenders.
Mm-hmm.
So they're mainly victimless crimes. Some of that is property. So there is somebody who actually is a victim there, but if we're looking at the restitution, that would be something you could go through that, and you're not necessarily murder, so you're not in prison for it.
Mm-hmm.
You're just paying someone back.
Yeah.
Right.
So if okay, so
you go ahead.
all right, no, but just to go piggyback off what Book just said there. If you were to stop imprisoning nonviolent criminals, right, and begin to start paying restitution for violent crimes, your prison system is a lot smaller.
Yeah, or even in restitutions for nonviolent people who just like steal or
Sure.
damage property.
And
go ahead, Ken.
Yeah,
No,
finish.
I'm just saying what you already said in the sense that, now the prison system's a lot smaller, right?
Significantly
smaller. So you're not, and this goes back to, I'm just thinking from a tax dollar's point of view, because I don't want to pay for this kind of thing. I'm just trying to get out of paying, Oh.
That bottle's tricky. That bottle's toy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that cork is
That thing tied up in the.
You can hear it every time we open it. It's
I
like,
know.
Yeah, I'm not messing with it.
Karen's
door.
like, yeah, go ahead. He's like, I
No, but
completely
I'm just
forgot
saying,
where I was.
your prison system now is significantly smaller, right? Much more manageable, because now we're at where we're at right now. If we're not talking about our libertarian utopia, right now the prisons are so full that they're constantly having to build new prisons to deal with a system that's in place, right?
Yeah.
So, just to say what we've already said, if we really actually institute these things, right? Which we're probably not going to, but
No,
we're making good points.
not in our lifetime, at least.
And I hope that people hear this and they're interested and they're provoked to maybe not be
So tribal.
so binary in the thinking,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, just to go back to that,
And just to kind of snowball off what you're saying, I think, if you have a more privatized system out of touch of the, government's dick beaters, I think you'd see a lot more people, maybe being a little more understanding of situations. Like, for example, when my brother was killed, he was hit by, a girl, and she admitted to, she had admitted to smoking pot earlier that night. And, we didn't press charges because, we're, not like, I'm no saint. My father was no saint. My mother was no saint. Like, we're not, we just understand things. Like, we genuinely see the good in people, I think, is what it ultimately came down to. But regardless of what, we were the family that was affected, right? Like, It was us. Like, it wasn't, the state didn't lose any money off my brother's death. Not to reduce it to money, but, like, we were ultimately the ones that were affected, and we didn't want to press charges. But that girl still faced a lot of difficulties, right?
Sure.
She still had to do jail time. Like, she still had to go through shit because of what happened. But at the end of the day, it was like we were the ones that were affected, and we didn't want to press charges. Like, we didn't want to ruin that girl's, they were young, right? We didn't want to ruin that girl's life. It could have been anybody, honestly. It could have been my dad when he was younger. Could have been me when I was younger. Like,
right.
You do dumb things when you're young. So, just to kind of snowball off what you were saying, I think if you see a more free market capitalist kind of structure in regards to the prison system, I think you'd see more families like mine that were just kind of like, it's a terrible, it's a tragedy, but, is a young girl. She was just doing young girl shit, and that's kind of what happened. Like,
yeah.
I think you'd see more families like that, and at the end of the day, you'd see more, more people or less people in prisons. And I think that's the ultimate goal, right? Is to have less people in slavery and, trapped up on dumb shit. Not saying that that's dumb, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sorry to get dark, but
no,
you're good.
no. So to take Bookie's horns over there with his devil advocate stuff, but like, so would restitution incentivize people doing the opposite of what you just said?
That's a good point. That's a good point, and it's a fair point.
Right.
I think it would, but
So that's
I mean
something
that incentive's already there, right? Like
Right.
we could have went for this girl's throat and
Yep.
put her away for. I mean, we probably could have put her away for life if we pressed charges, right?
And that's
she
actually
admitted
one
to
of the
smoking
big-
and like, but we didn't because
That's one of the
We're
big
just decent
criticisms of making it a private system is and in the whole restitution type of system. One of the big criticisms is that they say people will they'll have an incentive to create a false crime because they can get restitution from it.
Right.
And I mean, as Nick just said, that incentive is already there. It's not there. It's not any less. There's not any less of an incentive to create false evidence and false accusations than there already are. Especially because now the people who control the evidence and all that stuff are the state, and so those people, if they have an incentive to convict someone, they have all the availability to tamper and do whatever they can to actually cause the conviction. Whereas in a private system, I think that would be a lot
harder to do.
Yes,
Yeah.
because the people prosecuting wouldn't have direct access to the evidence.
Right.
Good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I know.
We
Yeah.
just sawed them. We just sawed them horns off, boy.
No, I mean, I think what Cameron asked, I think it would, people would be more inclined, okay, well, maybe I can get some payment. No, it is payment for it, but, is that wrong of them not to do that? Has they been wrong?
Yeah, if it's a
I think
legit
if
crime,
you
then-
feel and
Yeah.
if you feel,
but we're talking
the
about like
crime-
framing someone for a crime because you can get restitution from it.
Yeah.
I think is
That's
what
the
we're-
negative side of it.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
But like you
But
said,
that's something that can already happen.
it's already happening.
Yeah.
And if there's a lot
Well,
less...
especially to kind of jump back to what you
Wait,
you
who's
were
jumping
saying,
on
right?
who?
Boogie?
We jumping on who?
I'm jumping on you, boy.
Okay, if we're jumping back.
No, what you were saying earlier, how they bring the Operation Justice, or what was it? Operation Innocence? Project Innocence?
Project Innocence, yeah.
Yeah, you were saying that, that just to kind of go back, that's already happening now, right?
Yeah,
Well,
totally.
I mean, Chris made a really good point, and if you heard him, he said the incentive.
He always does that,
yeah,
fucking bastard.
it's a mustache.
It
No,
is.
but the incentive.
And the intelligence.
The incentive is already there, but it's on the.
Oh, whoa!
the
To be
justice-
fair, I said that first, and he
okay.
said Nick. Yeah. All right, anyway, go ahead.
gave you
No, but
I gave you
the
credit.
incentive is already
You
there,
did,
but
you did.
just
Cameron
from
did.
the justice department already, right? The
Yep.
incentive is there from that point of view, which they have a lot more access to evidence and things like that.
Yeah.
Where if you're just a victim or whatever, you have a lot less access.
Right.
So maybe you have incentive, but you don't have the feet to make it happen.
Right.
Which
If
is-
it's not true. Yeah.
Exactly. Which I mean, man, that's a good point. I think I totally agree with that.
yeah.
Sure, you can have incentive, but if you don't have ways to back it up by false evidence, then let the courts deal with it, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then if you don't
Private
have,
courts.
if you don't have as many laws, then you're limited to what you can frame somebody for.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So like you can't get somebody for something ridiculous, but if you're trying to frame someone for property theft, murder, those are harder things.
Right. You need real evidence.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah. Wow. Good stuff.
Yeah. One of the things with the current system is that judges are really, they're immune from basically any decisions that they make. It doesn't matter if it's the wrong decision.
right, there's no repercussions.
There's no
for
repercussions
a
for
bad
that.
call. so to
And this
speak.
is this is legit. This isn't just me saying this like this is how the system is. This is how it's played out. This is written in law. In 1872, The Supreme Court ruled that judges are immune from any damage suits for any judicial acts that they perform, regardless of how wrong, evil, or unconstitutional that they are.
I will never understand those type of laws that completely dissolve any sort of responsibility from any decision. Like, for instance, Pfizer and Moderna and all these companies that have immunity from any prosecution for putting out a bad vaccine, or like you said, the judge thing. I will never understand companies, people, organizations getting immunity for making bad calls.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Absolutely. Because these are decisions that impact people's lives to the greatest extent.
Yeah.
Like, these are decisions that it's the difference between you're spending the rest of your life in prison or you're a free person. That's a big deal.
That is a massive deal.
And the fact that a judge can send you to a cage for the rest of your life, and if it's a wrongful conviction, he faces no consequences. That's very concerning,
especially for a country that
we've been living
pounds
with that.
Their chest on the notion of freedom, right?
And we've been living with that since 1872.
Yeah, that's wild.
Are you the type of guy who goes above and beyond on the 4th of July to display your love for this great nation? Does your love for this country often result in you waking up in the emergency room on July 5th with third-degree burns on your ass and taint because you embraced the great American tradition of shooting a bottle rocket out of your ass? We have your ass covered, featuring the Freedom Fighter butt sleeve, a silicone insert for your anus with a built-in taint flap, which will allow you to safely launch rockets into the stratosphere from your freedom-loving ass and show your great love for this country like none other. Visit freedomfighterbutt-sleeves.com and use your code POTR for an exclusive buy one get two free offer. Perfect for any 4th of July party, since we do not recommend sharing the butt sleeve.
Oh God!
All right, so going back to that idea that we just talked about with judges having basically unlimited immunity in regards to whether what they're doing is good or bad or unconstitutional. And, that's something we've been dealing with since 1872. Well, one of the things I stumbled across while I was researching for this episode was this article written by Murray Rothbard, which is one of, I think, me and Nick's heroes in the libertarian community. He's an anarchist libertarian writer. So he wrote a lot of good books that a lot of people should check out. I would recommend For a New Liberty, which really just kind of goes across a broad stroke of all the things we're talking about.
That's the book that introduced me to a lot of the things that I believe in now.
Yep. So one of the things he wrote about in the 70s, I think it was in 1978 that he wrote about this. So this case in DeKalb County, Indiana in 1971, a woman by the name of Mrs. Orrin Spittler McFarlane, she basically contacted a judge, and she had a 15-year-old daughter. Her name was Linda Key Spittler, and she was starting to talk to boys. She was starting to get a little out there, according to her mother. She was worried that maybe she'd get pregnant or something. And so she talked to this judge, and she expressed her concerns, and the judge said, yeah, that's a valid concern. And so what they did was they conspired to sterilize the daughter. And so the judge authorized that the daughter be forcefully sterilized without her knowledge. And the doctors went along with it. They told her that she was going in for appendicitis or appendix removal surgery or something like that. And she actually had her tubes tied at the age of 15 and was sterilized. And so that happened, and then she didn't even know about it until she was in her 20s, and she was married, and she tried to have kids, and she couldn't have kids. She went to the doctor. They told her, hey, your tubes are tied. Did you know that? and she said, well, that must have been my mother. So they sued the mother, and it was found that basically since everything was done under the approval
Direction
of
of a judge, yeah.
the direction of a judge, that it was basically everyone underneath the judge that acted in his accordance was immune. So all the doctors, the mother, all of them were granted immunity on behalf of just following the judge's orders.
It's disgusting.
And the judge himself, he was 1 second here.
A bitch ass?
Yeah, so the judge was immune because he acted in his capacity, even though he had an erroneous view of the law, which was specifically what they said. They said he acted in his capacity as a judge, although he had an erroneous view of the law, but he's still immune because he's a judge.
Isn't that his job as a judge?
Right.
To not have an erroneous
So not
view of the law?
only is he immune, but he bestows a king-like immunity on anyone that he, gives orders to.
Right, anybody working under his direction
Right.
is automatically immune because...
Yeah, and
That's
so
what year was this?
This was in 1971. And so, then the Seventh Circuit challenged this, and it ended up in a Supreme Court case, Stump versus Sparkman, which Stump, I believe, was the name of the doctor who... it was actually... I'm not sure. Stump, I believe, was the name of the doctor. But, so Justice Byron R. Whizzer White, which that's like his nickname is Whizzer, which is pretty sick nickname, not gonna lie. But, he was the leader of this whole, this thing saying that that they were immune, and he reinforced that, and the Supreme Court voted 5-3 in favor of the judge, saying that he acted within his capacity.
So wait, more judges judged on the judge? That's the judge to judge things?
Right, the judge voted for the judge and determined that the judge did nothing wrong, and Whizzer said a judge will not be deprived of immunity because the action he took was in error, was done maliciously, or was in excess of his authority. Rather, he will be subject to liability only when he has acted in the clear absence of jurisdiction.
So basically the only way a judge can be responsible for his actions as if he's out of his jurisdiction.
Right, and apparently removing a 15-year-old girl's reproductive capacity is within his jurisdiction. So no state law or court ruling was ever said to have authorized what they did, the compulsory sterilization. And
but because he has that blanket immunity, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. But the important point, according to White, who made the justice who made this statement, was that there was no statute or ruling that prohibited it.
That's his biggest argument.
Right.
Is although I don't have permission to do it, I also don't have permission to not do it.
Yeah, like no one told me not to do it. So
So wait, no one told you to sterilize someone? No one told you that you can't sterilize people?
Yeah.
And that's your argument? To sterilize people?
Golly.
Yeah. So that's just one example of just...
And that's crazy because I guarantee you there's no, there's nothing that's been put on the books that, counteract that implementation.
Right. Yeah. That's scary. And,
I mean, I say that I haven't looked into that. I'd have to look into that more, but I
doubt it.
Yeah, I doubt it. Right. Especially with some of the calls you've seen. So yeah, and I don't know, man. That's like one of my biggest problems with our current judicial system is like, at the end of the day, you're leaving the decision up to one person, right? I mean, you have a jury, but I mean, a lot of times it's the judge's decision, and that's final.
Yeah. I mean, the judge really influences the trial heavily. I think the jury actually looks to the judge as kind of the arbiter in the whole
Right, like,
case.
oh, what should we do?
And when the judge expresses a, favor, expresses a, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but he is in favor of one side over another, and it's kind of obvious, then the jury kind of leans that way.
Yep.
And that's just how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, and if, I mean, not off topic entirely, but we're talking about juries and stuff right now, but the whole Bill Cosby case getting thrown out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's nuts.
It was just like a mistake in the
technicality.
prosecution, right?
No. So what happened is I guess, I can't remember what year it was, but he was tried at a state level for very similar things. Obviously, there wasn't as many women that came forward, but
It was a civil case.
yeah, it was a civil case at the state level where he was tried for essentially the same exact thing, just not, 60 women, whatever it was. And part of the, part of his confession or his, disposition, whatever it was, or deposition, part of his thing was that he went into the hearing thinking that whatever he said could not be used against him
Yeah.
in further trials. So he basically spilled the beans and admitted to all this shit, thinking that it couldn't be used against him. But the court never ruled it that was the, that was what was going to happen. So he went in thinking that, okay, whatever I say is just for this case. It can never be used outside of this case. A judge never signed off on that, but the attorneys, for whatever reason, told him that was the case. So he went into this court hearing, or, whatever it was, and he said whatever he said. And the latest case, they used that evidence against him. But the court ruled because he thought, air quote, thought, even though a judge did not rule it.
Are you sure it was thought? Because I think it was part of the case, a deal, that anything he said in that case could not be used against
A judge
him.
never signed off on it.
But it was still agreement between him and the attorneys.
Right, but a
That's
judge
what
never signed off on
Yeah,
it.
but that's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I'm saying.
but
A
I'm
judge
saying-
never signed off on it, though.
But I don't think that matters because it's part of the agreement between the attorneys.
That's why he got off. That's what I'm saying. That's why he got off on
But
this.
the judge thing doesn't really matter too much.
I mean, yeah, kind of, because at the end of the day, I mean, if we're going to do this system that we have in place, and the judge, like you said, is the arbiter of, all this system, if a judge doesn't sign off on it, it's not final, right?
Not necessarily. It depends. But
What do you mean?
it depends.
Explain.
Because the agreement is between him and the
Well,
attorneys.
obviously in this case, right, yeah, but, I mean, a judge never signed off on it, so...
But you keep saying that, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything because it depends on the case itself.
Right, but at the same time, so it's interesting because
They're using
ignorance is never an excuse to break the law, except when it's convenient, right?
And that's the thing about the justice system is that all these technicalities
Correct.
Yeah.
actually kind of muddle everything because, like you're saying, so he came into this case thinking, okay, I can say whatever I want to say and it's never going to be used against me in the future. And so then he, said whatever he said. I really don't know anything about the case, but, and so then he could, let's say he confessed to everything and, then he's assuming that it's going to be, that record
Dead
is
there.
going to be
Right.
gone.
It's
after,
dead at that point, yeah.
And then, but how does that even make sense though? How does that even make sense that like you can just say, you
Yeah.
can give a
Even
testimony.
if a judge signed off on it, right? How the fuck does that make
You
sense?
can give a when you give a testimony in our judicial system, that's the, like, the most important thing because you're giving it under oath. If that doesn't mean anything, then what means anything under our system? Like if you're allowed to lie under oath, then what is the fucking point of the whole system? Like if you can just say whatever you want to say and it doesn't mean anything, then what's the point?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no, I agree too, but this is the system we have. And just to give a little background, the reason why they did it in civil is because the burden of proof is so much lower. And when you do civil, it's not you're not looking. It's all paid via actual payment. Like you're looking for money.
Yeah.
And that's why the burden of proof is not as high because it's just it's really reparations there.
Yep.
So again, when he did that case, that's why he's like, okay, this is just civil. Oh, kind of like you think of it as an OJ, right? He lost his civil, but he won the criminal.
So in reality, Bill Cosby, obviously he had a lot of money at that point. So in that civil case, arguably he could have been like, you know what, I just want to get this over with. I'm going to confess and pay off whatever, I need to pay to people, and then I'm going to get this over with and then get it out of my life. So in reality, that confession could have been kind of forced because he just wanted to get out of it.
He's like I'm just going to pay money. Why do I care?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And then,
so you're arguing
and that's a
just...
product of the way the system is formatted. Is that he just maybe just wanted it to end and wanted to get out of it. Like, that could have been a possibility.
So you're not that you're arguing, but you're kind of saying that
Bill Cosby's innocent.
No, but what you're saying is basically like whatever happened in that civil case, maybe he just agreed to say yeah I did it just to pay it off and have it swept away.
Right. Yeah. The way the system's formulated, that's a very real possibility.
And in my opinion, the reason why it got overrun is because the legal team against Bill Cosby in this criminal case tried to use what they could not use.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's their fault. And I think...
Could not use under a technicality, though.
But still, you can't use it. They should know that.
Right.
And when you're using
totally
something that should not be used, and that's what gets him convicted on that criminal, he totally should get out. Because, again, I'm just, this is me thinking, if that's anybody else,
Right.
I want the law to be upheld to such a high degree that, unfortunately, bad people will get out.
Yeah.
Because that's such a fringe case where it should be able to where people who aren't in the wrong can't get fucked. If that makes sense. You should have to dot your I's and cross your T's so well that if you mess up, it's just out.
Yeah, and that's a good point because I'd have to look more into that civil case that that they referenced is why he got why it was overturned. I just don't agree that him not knowing that a judge didn't sign off and that whatever he said wasn't the case. I don't feel like that's a legitimate reason to not have that evidence held against you.
Well, so when you talk about technicalities and stuff like that, like we're talking about, imagine a situation where you have two lawyers that agree on a certain situation, like they did in this situation, and you say something that potentially incriminates you when you thought that there's no way that it could incriminate you, and you ended up in prison.
Right.
So those technicalities in that situation make a lot of sense.
No, and that's a fair point.
Yeah, and so I
was saying, I trust me, I get it. I know exactly what you guys are saying. But at the same time, when you get pulled over and you say whatever you're getting pulled over for, and you're like, oh, I didn't know that you couldn't do that. The first argument is, oh, well, ignorance of the law isn't an excuse.
Right.
His ignorance of not knowing that whatever he said could be held against him, that shouldn't be, that shouldn't be an excuse to not have that evidence held against him. Same thing with Clinton with her email. She was like, they were like, oh, she didn't, it wasn't malicious, so whatever. It's like, yeah, but, what you did still matters. Regardless if if it was negligent or it could be used against you, you still know what you did was wrong. I don't know.
I think it kind of comes back to the whole, convictions are good thing in our system because in that case, it was like, hey, Bill, if you just confess, we're going to just let you off on this lighter sentence or whatever the case might have been. And so he just goes, all right, yeah, I'm just going to confess and this won't affect anything else that might happen in the future, and it'll be better off. Like his plus and minuses at that time, knowing what he knew, he might have just confessed, even if he wasn't guilty. Which
Right.
I'm not saying he wasn't.
Yeah.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
that in that instance, assume he wasn't guilty. In that case, these prosecutors and the judge, they clearly want to have some sort of conviction, and so having him admit is a foreign. It brings that, it gives them that benefit, and then on top of it, it allows him to just kind of get out and just do what he needs to do to take care of it, and then just leave the case.
Yeah, and I think that's a when you take someone like him with such a, I guess it wasn't that high profile because not many people even know that case exists. But when you take someone like him, who's definitely paying, millions on millions for these attorneys, you would think, whatever your attorney tells you is probably pretty solid. And I think that's a good reflection of how unnecessarily complicated our legal system is. That he's paying millions on millions on millions for these defense attorneys, I'm sure, and they don't even know what's going on, right? Even if it was an agreement between the defense and the prosecution. And I think I have no real point. The point is, I think that's a good representation of how overly complicated the system is.
Yeah, but at the same time, his money is what got him off.
Big time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He had lawyers.
Yeah,
that
same thing with
looked
OJ. I mean,
looked
OJ,
into the
yeah.
details, and that's why he got off.
Yeah.
For sure the money, but also, it's the same point because the money is good lawyers.
Yeah, right.
But I still stand by, if the people who are trying to convict him in his case that got thrown out now, just because we think he did it and he probably did, doesn't mean he should just automatically go to jail. He has to.
No, you're right.
Yeah,
I agree.
You're absolutely right.
And it's it's just that fine line when you're dealing with the law where it should be held to such a high point where it needs to be perfect because then you're dealing with people's lives.
You're right. But
And
to play, I'm going to put my horns on.
Yeah.
To play devil's advocate, if we're going to argue that, why wasn't his civil case held to the same degree?
Because it's civil.
Right. Oh, but why? But shouldn't the level of the whatever you were saying, the degree of the
offense.
Shouldn't the degree of the whatever the evidence and all this shit, shouldn't that be held to the same degree, or no? You think civil and criminal are different?
It is different.
Well, no, I'm agreeing, but
that's the reason why they're different is because they need to be.
Right.
Because in civil, the burden of proof is lower, and you can only go after money.
But then why was, if his civil case was for raping a woman, why was that civil and not criminal?
Because they know they couldn't get him for criminal because they don't have enough proof.
So she didn't want that money.
Yeah, I mean, it's a system we have, but that's just true. If you don't have enough money to convict him,
and I'll take it even a step further. Why are there two different levels of why is there a criminal and civil?
That's a good question. I just know it's burden of proof. Because if you don't have, I guess
the point I'm trying to bring up is if you committed a crime, you committed a crime, right? Whether it's criminal, civil, whatever it is, you committed a crime. So why are the levels of evidence different depending on the crime?
I think it's. Again, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's slightly different. So, in civil,
we need a lawyer. If any lawyer wants to ring in.
One of the realities of whenever some of these celebrities get embroiled in these types of scandals is that there's a lot of money on the table as far as settlements come to, because they're celebrities. They have a lot of money, and so I think that's one of the big things that comes into play is that there's a lot of money on the table. And so there's a lot of incentive for people to come forward because they can get some sort of settlement from it. I'm not saying that's what happened in the Bill Cosby case, but I'm saying that's a factor to consider when it comes to people with a lot of money being accused of whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they don't want to deal with the whole case. They want to just settle and pay it off and get it over with. But one of the things that I was going to bring up now that we're talking about, celebrities accused of sexual assault and stuff is the Jerry Sandusky case. You guys know about that?
I do not.
Yes.
So that was the
coach.
Penn State defensive coordinator who was he was accused of raping a kid in the Penn State showers. And then there was it was a huge deal back in, I think, 2013, where Jerry Sandusky there were, I think, 10 total victims, that came forward and said that, they were sexually assaulted by Jerry Sandusky, and, he's in prison right now. And, I recently listened to this really well-made podcast. It's called With the Benefit of Hindsight, and it talks about this Jerry Sandusky case and all the things wrong with it, and I highly encourage people to listen to it if they're curious about the ways that our judicial system can go awry. I think this is a great example, and I honestly, after listening to this podcast, so for a long time, I had no, just looking at Jerry Sandusky, I was like, oh, that guy's guilty. He raped those kids for sure. But after listening to this podcast, I suddenly realized, oh shit, I think this guy was framed, and all of these victims were paid millions of dollars in settlements from Penn State University. And I think that played a huge factor into why they came forward and made these accusations. And, maybe Jerry Sandusky wasn't the perfect guy. He might have actually been a little bit creepy, but I don't think he actually, raped any kids. And so that's kind of it's a pretty good example. And so I would definitely encourage people to listen to that podcast. It's eye-opening for sure.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Well, shit. We're approaching 2 hours.
Flippity flop.
Flippity flop.
5 minutes.
Suck on my
So,
flop.
I guess to start
closing
closing arguments.
statements. Let's go.
So closing statements, I think, let's go here from, it's kind of from Ludwig von Mises, a little bit, but it's kind of just true. So government's only function should be preserving the system of voluntary cooperation by preventing disputes from devolving into violence, prosecute people who commit crimes against person and property, and those who don't abide by agreed upon contracts. And so, if you're not agreeing by a contract, you're preventing people. This is in a business setting, you're preventing people who are being productive from being productive because you're not abiding by your contract. So those are the types of things that I think the government should be involved in. And other than that, it's
Wait, did I just hear an anarchist say that the government should be involved in anything?
I'm saying,
Lord.
If they're going to be involved, that's all they should be involved in.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's a fair conclusion. I'm not going to say anything because, I pretty much, as the anarchist on the other side of the table, I agree. I think that's a pretty well surmised point. Any closing arguments from you two assholes across the table?
No, I think we covered pretty much what I have to say. No, I think just to reiterate everything we've already said. But once you make something so massive, in this sense, the government, and it overflows into the justice system and everything else, there's a lot of incentives to do things that aren't necessarily right.
Right.
And there's a lot of
outside influence, which obviously there shouldn't be when it comes to justice, right?
Yeah. And so there's a lot of influence, and so I don't know. Like every time, I just like to encourage people to look at something different than what they're used to looking at. Challenge people to think about violent crimes and non-violent crimes differently, than maybe you have in the past. look into that kind of thing. Look into some of the stuff we talked about today, and just roll it over in your own mind. Ask if it's right. Ask if it brings you closer to liberty or if it doesn't.
Does it spark joy?
Does it spike joy?
No, we appreciate you guys hanging out with
Yeah.
us tonight. So
Any closing arguments, Book?
Yeah, I mean, just a statement in general. Go back to our original. The beginning of this iceberg was DeSantis' vetoed bill
Oh, that's right. That was the initial topic.
having to deal with the juveniles being able to, get felonies off. If that's the system we currently live in, I think that was a somewhat good move. Hopefully, some things change in that to allow it to be put in. But if we're actually going to try to change so juveniles and actual adults aren't continually being torn into this system of jail, prison out, I think we need to, like we discussed in thorough detail, really take a look at it and cut it up and make it a lean system of laws, and that so not everybody, like it's always easy to point to illegal drugs, but I think it's the one most people can relate to. Not everybody having illegal drugs is going to be in prison with a felony for something they're doing to themselves. Like Cameron stated, if it's a victimless crime, why are we not even just like from a paying standpoint of paying these people to be in prison? Why are we taking this time away from people, which is probably worth more than most money that people will have?
Not only that, I'd argue you're taking these people that maybe sold a couple grams of fucking weed and you're putting them in with killers and shit, and it's like, what is that going to do to them? It's just going to make them worse.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have said that earlier.
Not to mention that
whole
there's
other
a very
topic, but-
active drug trade within the prison system.
Right.
So,
Yeah, like putting them in prison is going to stop that.
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
they can't even stop drugs from being in prisons. So
Yeah.
Yep. Guys who
shows
get
you the success.
super jacked in prison, sometimes they're taking a little sauce. So how did that get in there?
That's it. Well, that was a fun episode.
Yeah.